This has been Strictly Ball Business.
Strictly ball business.
Strictly ball business.
I like that video.
Ah, shit.
But speaking of winning basketball, let's talk about the century. I think it was Bleacher Report released this this graphic that I'm gonna put up right now for you guys. It's winning percentage since 2000, and it shows which teams were the best, which teams were the worst over the last 22 years. What sticks out to you looking at this right away? And who you surprised is bad? Who you surprised is good?
Man, I gotta get the graphic up here.
Oh yeah. No, let me jump in. So first off, what's unsurprising is the Knicks are the worst winning percentage of the century. Not surprised. I guess this is the shitting on Knicks episode, but man, that's got to be tough. I mean, as a Magic fan, saying that's tough. I don't know, but 45%? No, more than 45. They're just not up there. But bottom three teams: Timberwolves, Wizards, Hornets, all make sense. None of those are outliers. All of them, that's par for the course. That's what it sounds like. One that is surprising to me is the Warriors. Warriors are just right above average, so they're right above the middle of the winning percentage, and it's kind of surprising. You know, you've seen they've formed a dynasty this century. Even before that, they had Gilbert Arenas, Davis, Richardson. They had good players. I guess they just either were they didn't start really winning until up until recently. I mean, they had the best record of all time this century. So that's kind of weird to see them as 15th or 14th, 15th on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little surprising, but they have had some really bad years mixed in there, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they had a bad year 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors, honestly, they were really not like a historic franchise at all till this run. They did struggle for years. When they had the Baron Davis years, that was as good as it was for 20 years.
Yeah.
Before that.
Yeah, and struggled with Monta Ellis for 7 years. That was a whole thing too.
Yeah, I mean, they were good enough to be okay for a bit, but it wasn't anything that was really substantial.
True. I guess they've only had 6 dominant years out of the 22 years, so that really, because 6 from 2015 minus, it's been 7 years, but minus the one for when they drafted Wiseman. So that, I guess that does, math wise, it makes sense. It's just looking at what up to this point, it's just kind of weird to see them that low.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a great stretch run now, and obviously that's ascending them on the ranks, but I would assume before this run, they were probably for sure in the 20s on this list. Yeah.
And right above them, just barely, are the Raptors too. This is another team where I'm kind of surprised that they're in the middle. I mean, obviously, they've just been kind of mediocre since Kawhi left, but I mean now they've stayed in the playoffs. But even then, Vince, DeRozan period, they've had some good periods this century. It's just, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, they were terrible after they had Vince, and they only had Vince for a couple of years until he forced his way out. But they had him and McGrady for a moment. I don't even know if those guys crossed paths. If they did, it was a season.
Probably fell in the 90s too.
But then it was, spending the first overall pick on Andrea Bargnani. It was it was a lot of years with Chris Bosh where they just weren't winning games. They had a losing season every year. But Chris Bosh was their guy. It was the fan favorite. He was an all-star, so they weren't interested in ever getting rid of him, till he eventually left, and then he went to Miami. And shortly after that, they got DeRozan, and eventually they started winning games with him too. But even that took a while.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. Did you get a chance to look at it again?
Otherwise, I got no idea where this image is.
Probably check
my phone.
Yeah.
I don't got my phone on me.
Oh, that's fine. Well,
you sent it to my Facebook. I can pull it up.
I can't. Oh yeah, I can send it to your Facebook. All right, so I'll say my most surprising though is the Jazz. Actually, they're back on another topic. They're the 4th best record this century.
Yeah,
that's pretty insane, huh?
That is interesting. They have always been a very stable franchise, but you don't think of them as one that's had a ton of superstars. Like, all right, I got the list now. So yeah, I mean, they're right there with Boston, LA, and Miami, which is surprising. But they had some good years with Darren Williams, ones where they weren't gonna ever win a championship, but they were certainly a good team. And then obviously they've had a really solid run now with this Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert team. And really, like, that didn't last. That didn't like start that long after like the Darren Williams group. Like they didn't have any like terrible years because they got Donovan Mitchell with like the 15th pick in the draft, or in that trade at least. That's where he was picked originally.
Yeah, and they were immediately in the playoffs. If you remember that, like his rookie year, he's fighting off OKC.
Yeah, year one he dragged them there. So he's clearly a transcendent player.
Yeah, I mean they had Okur for like 6.5 years. He was a pretty decent center. Plus, this is the 2000s, so
they
it's
had
like
Karolinko. He was great too. They did have a very solid starting team with Karolinko, Mehmet Okur, and I feel like there's somebody else mixed in there. But
Boozer was with Williams. Carlos Boozer was with Williams too. So they had
that was a great duo. Right. Yeah, so they've always done a great job at like pivoting and finding like a good to great player or a couple of them. Mm-hmm. And to at least keep them in relevancy. They just haven't really done a great job at putting themselves over the top. Like the closest we've really seen was when they were the 1 seed, but then they lost in the second round anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like all the company there with the Lakers, Celtics, Miami, Mavericks, Spurs, they've all won championships, but not them. I mean, the 2000s does include the tail end of the Stockton, Malone era, but still, obviously. So that's probably why they're so high too.
Yeah, they've done a great job at carving out that consistency, but they definitely are the anomaly here. Obviously, the Rockets are there too, but they're a little bit lower than these other ones. But I still think like the Rockets had a fantastic chance to win a championship multiple years, and they were very close to doing it. I think 2017, but then Chris Paul got hurt, and they weren't able to beat the Warriors. They had their best years when the Warriors had their best years, and like couldn't pick a worse time. Yeah,
that's the way it happens. I mean, that's the magic. Penny and Shaq just happened to be going against Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. You know, that's just that's the way it is. Like that's probably one of the best teams in the NBA. They just were against each other. So that's the way it happens. But looking at this list, any other ones that just jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas obviously got to recognize their success regardless of only having really one superstar the whole time. Mm-hmm. But they've always had great regular seasons. They've done a great job at getting the top seed in most playoffs, and it's paid off with a championship. It's paid off with a couple of conference finals appearances. So, hats off to them, and obviously the Spurs. We all know why they're there. Their consistency is insane, but
the Greg effect.
Yeah, the Greg effect and the big three they had forever. Like rare to see something like that.
Longest playoff streak in history, like 22 years in the playoffs or whatever it was.
Yeah. So it's just hard to see like that type of continuity between that same group of players for that long. It's unheard of. Guys have too big of egos usually, and I mean, what's a team that you can think of where their duo or trio you think is going to stay together like for the majority of their entire careers?
Like current players?
The current teams, you could see that happening.
Warriors.
Similar to Spurs. Yeah, I mean, the Warriors are really the only example. I mean, is there any outside of that? The Warriors are an easy one because they've already won the championships, I guess. So minus the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, I see some potential out there with the Pistons, with Cade, Hardy, and
that's a hot take.
I do
get the air horn.
I do think they're I guess Bagley doesn't really count, but those guys, I think they have enough to possibly stay together. I think the Magic are gonna get blown up at some point. It doesn't really matter, but
yeah.
Active players, everyone wants to go everywhere, so it's really tough to see that loyalty. That loyalty's rare now, like you just said. So
Yeah, I'm gonna put a vote out there for my Minnesota Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns has said that he never ever wants to leave Minnesota. So him, Anthony Edwards, and Rudy Gobert the rest of their career. But it's obviously not the same longevity as the Spurs. They drafted each of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, they. Edwards has been drafted. Edwards and Cat were drafted,
Edwards and Towns are both drafted.
What? One of them, Ginobili, was a draft night trade, wasn't he?
I think so. I mean, he was a later pick because he was coming over from Europe, obviously. But I mean, he actually still might have been a decently high pick. He was a good prospect.
Yeah, but I also don't think Anthony Edwards is going to spend his career with the Timberwolves. He just seems like a big market guy. I know. I'm sorry. I want him to stay.
I'm good. That's it. I'm calling in my hit, man. They're gonna get you now.
I'm driving 40 minutes. Beat some ass.
We're gonna move on from that tomfoolery. The winning percentage since 2001. We realized the Spurs reign king. Funny to see where they're at now. We have lived through their dynasty. We have seen the end of it. Greg Popovich is still there, so he's trying to bridge to the next generation. But
that's a wrap for us, guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. We love talking about basketball, and you love listening to us. So it's a match made in heaven, I think.